forum will cover development of digital infrastructure and content. We've got two main speakers for this session today with different specialties. Our first speaker, Monsieur Dakala Michel, is the coordinator from the CABL project, Central Africa Backbone, so the backbone in Central Africa. And our second panelist comes from another organization who's working beyond infrastructure and transport and more on data centers. We've got Silas Kipla, who comes from PAX, PAIX. It's an organization that creates data centers in Kenya, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana. So these two panelists will share their experience with us and tell us why we need backbones to be able to go forward with all this digital transformation that we've been discussing for the last 2 days. And they're going to mention maybe some challenges that they've faced and what they've done, and maybe some projections for the future based on the current context. I'm going to now give the floor to Michel, who will introduce his section, and then we will give the floor to Silas. Michel, the floor is yours. We're struggling with screen share. Just give me 1 minute. Could I get access to the internet, please?
Okay.
Just 1 minute. We've got one little technical glitch here. Apologies for the delay. Maybe Silas. Just another minute. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you, Michel. You can come over here if you want. Hello, everyone. I'm Michel Decala, coordinator for the Central Africa Backbone project. Debates have focused on peering and interconnection, but this cannot happen if there's no infrastructure that is built by certain operators, and the role of the CAB project is to build this. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the project. It's financed by the BUG. And in Congo, we have the Finance Ministry. We focused on telecommunications. The project was launched in 2017 and was supposed to come to term in 2020, but we've had some struggles, so the project is still ongoing. So what was the objective of the project? First of all, it was to contribute to diversification of Congolese economy with increasing fiscal revenue and reduction of the cost of economic transitions. The second objective is to improve the situation digitally in rural zones via the construction of infrastructure of optic fiber. In the framework of this project, we want to recognize and build 3 infrastructures. 2 have already been built. The network that connects Congo with Cameroon. It's 341 kilometers long. And the second structure we've built is the one that's connected with Congo and Cameroon and the Central African Republic. We've also got a third project that we'll be working on. So what's the question here? Well, why should you interconnect with neighboring countries? Well, Congo has one exit point only via the ocean and uses one underwater cable, WAX. But what's the problem here? Well, if there is one problem with that cable, it doesn't have any other exit points. So within this project, Congo wanted to be connected to neighboring countries. So when you have multiple interconnections with neighboring countries means that this can decrease prices because it means there's more competition between operators. So here I just wanted to show you the map to show you that 20 years ago, there were only 2 countries that had access to underwater cables, South Africa and Egypt. Nowadays, there's around 60 cables that are interconnected around the African continent. And if I zoom in even further in Central Africa, and the CMAC region more specifically, there are 4 countries who have access to the sea: Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and Congo. So there are 2 countries that are earthbound, Chad and Central Africa Republic. So when we look at this configuration, we realized in 2017 that we had a discussion in Gemina to see how we could develop interconnectivities between different countries in Central Africa. And from this meeting, we realized we needed to create a common project. And that's the Central Africa Backbone project that would interconnect all the countries in the subregion. So the connection of these countries would allow multiple things. For Congo, for example, which at the time only had one exit point toward WAX. With the CAB project, we have an interconnection with Gabon, Cameroon, and we want to finish one with Central African Republic. So one exit point, but now it's connected to Gabon. Gabon has another one, so that's extra exit points. And that means there's backup solutions if there's a cut or a shutdown. Cameroon has 5 exit points. So with WAX, there's different ones. It means Congo then has 4 other points underwater that are added to the one they have via WAX. So these different configurations mean that Congo can not only have multiple exit points, but also decreases the costs. At present, we don't have optic fiber, and sometimes it's difficult. So the Central African Republic is expecting a lot from the project of interconnection with Congo. It's the same in Cameroon. Cameroon and RCA have different projects for interconnection. Congo finished its project first, but these other countries have ongoing projects too. So if we come back to Congo, here I just wanted to show you the different points that we have towards other countries. Bottom left in red, that's the point towards Gabon. 2019, I think it was established. Got 2 points towards Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Cameroon. I'm not going to mention the one on the bottom right because that was something that was done not by the CAB project. Beyond these 3 exits, we've also got one towards Gabinga, but this doesn't belong to the Congolese state. This was a private license, and they got the permission to build. I'm going to zoom in even further and go towards the north. Cameroon, Congo, and Central African Republic. So on the graph here, we have different points through which the network runs. So towards the west, you've got the red dot. That's the central point, and it connects the 2 networks, Congo, Cameroon, and Congo RCA. So towards the left and towards the north, 250 kilometers-ish of optic fiber. One important detail to mention is that the interconnection with Central African Republic called for 3 sites to be built. We built 3 sites northbound and 3 westbound. So the whole network is under rivers. It had never been done before. We've done it in Congo with a company that's a Chinese company that won the call for tender. But it was managed by a Congolese company. They built 512 meter platforms, built the whole basis, and brought all the equipment so that they could put in place the structure. I just wanted to show you a couple pictures of the work that we had to do to put in place this network. That's during the break. We had to dig big trenches, 341 kilometers, and we had to put these in place. Here you've got the workers in the trenches. All this was mostly done manually. And to the right is a river. Here is a picture of our technical sites. Several sites that look exactly the same. We've got solar panels. And in some sites, we'll have electric power. So if there's a shutdown, then the electrician grouping will take over, and vice versa. These sites are also under surveillance and have technical assistance and have someone who's on shift 24/7. This was just an L3T chamber being put in place. Here you've got a specific machine that helped with putting in place things when we had to dig to access under the rivers. And when you had work of civil engineering, we had to focus on environmental and societal situations. So we had visits with the population in villages, explained to them that we're implementing fiber. A lot of people didn't really know what we're doing. They thought we were putting copper. So we explained that it wasn't copper, it was fiber. So during this meeting, we gave them information. We brought documents and materials to show them what we were doing, and to also explain what was going to happen in case, for example, we tore down a tree or see what was happening. You know, there's different rules, environmentally speaking. If you damage a tree, then you have to do certain things. We also had different meetings with inhabitants, and more specifically with department regions in, for example, Sangha regions. When you do civil engineering, often you need to cut up some different pipes in the town, and this can be water or electricity. And we had different people who helped us with negotiations with companies and local population. Here is a picture of the first stone that was laid during the project. And that's what I was telling you about earlier. What you can see here, we've built it all. And with the National Navy, we worked together. And we used space that hadn't been used before. The company discussed with the Navy to see if they could build this platform. The engines were brought in. You have containers that were installed. So that's 512 square meters platform. So it was the first time some of the people in that region were seeing such a big ship and platform. So that's how we were putting fiber in place. We worked with the Navy. There are certain zones and areas where we had to protect the edges because there's different blocks that we had to put in place. So yeah, that's just a brief overview of the project for the presentation of Congo, Cameroon, and Congo Central African Republic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michel, for sharing your experience with us on all these efforts that have been made. I'm sure you will have some questions from the public here. I think we'll hold on to those questions. And we're just going to give the floor to Silas to give him a chance to talk to us about another aspect of infrastructure that focuses maybe more on data centers. Silas?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
As I was saying, Silas is joining us from Ghana. He's speaking from Ghana. He's a member of Max, a data center, and he's going to share his experience in that field. And then we'll open the floor to questions to close this session. Silas, the floor is all yours.
Good morning. Silas. On this subject, I'm answering African internet. I bring all meetings from Ghana.
Please wait a moment. You seem that you have some issue.
About the data infrastructure in Africa. Also to the internet society. Yes. So I'm going to take us back in history, how data centers began, where it began from.
Can you hear us?
Some challenges that it comes with. So data centers evolved early sense of systems. And then these early machines were quite huge, and they will be used and managed by US military.
Silas, please, I think, wait a moment.
Hi. Oh, I'm unmuted. Yes. Oh, so no one can hear me. Okay, all right. Let me check. Let me check.
Allez, bonjour tout le monde. Donc, Silas va essayer de revérifier s'il n'a pas de souci de son à l'entrée, parce que nous n'arrivons pas à le recevoir sur site.
Hello, everyone. And now. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello. You still can't hear me. Can you hear me? Sorry for the sound issues. I hope it's okay. Everyone can hear me. Okay, so I think that I may have to begin
Can
again.
you check the French channel, please?
Can you hear me, please?
Allô, bonjour. Est-ce que les interprètes en français peuvent parler, juste pour checker dans la salle?
Hello, can you hear me?
Est-ce que vous pouvez aller sur le canal original? Mettez-vous en anglais. Anglais. Non, original. Allez sur original. Silas, can you speak again, please?
Can you hear me, please?
Hello, Silas, can you speak again, please?
Let me see.
No, s'il vous plaît.
Can you hear me, please?
Désolé. Problème de sortie de son, on va tenter de résoudre ce problème. For those who are online, so thanks for your patience. We are trying to connect again here.
Okay, thank you. Back. Okay, I think sound is there now. So, let me go back to the screen share and we'll start from there. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Okay,
Yes,
today we're going to talk about the digital infrastructure.
Silas, can you speak again?
Can you hear me? Is it okay
Hello,
now?
Silas?
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Silas.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, good. Okay. So,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Silas. Can you keep your microphone close to you yourself close to the microphone and speak clearly? It was a little bit low and noisy, so that you allow the interpreters to interpret well for you. We can hear you. We now need to have your voice in the room. Hold on a second. Can you test and say 1, 2, 3?
No. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello? Can everyone hear me? I think from my side, it's fine because I did a microphone test and then it worked perfectly. So I don't know what's happening, but from my end, it's okay from here. I don't know if you can all hear me now.
Silas, it's not a problem of your side. It's us to be able to hear you in the room. So hold on a second. It's the host machine.
Okay, okay.
test, test. Hello, Silas. Can you speak, please, now, just for testing?
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, great. Working now. So sorry for the delay.
No,
Donc, comme je disais, notre second panéliste, Silas, donc de Pax, donc je lui passe la parole pour pouvoir faire sa présentation. Et nous sommes encore désolés pour cet incident technique. Silas, over to you for your presentation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So today I'm speaking on the topic digital infrastructure in Africa, and then enhancing Africa's internet ecosystem and then strengthening its digital economy. So once again, my name is Silas Pepra from Ghana, a network engineer. You have my contact details there. You can reach out to me directly for any other comment or reservations if maybe your answers are not able to. I bring you all greetings from Ghana. I must say that it is with much pleasure to say that I'm happy to share my knowledge and experience in digital infrastructure to this amazing community. I would also like to appreciate the good work of the organizers of this event together. And then my good friends around here, thank you for the opportunity. And to the Internet Society, a wonderful community to find myself in. I must say that you've been doing a good work over the years. Let's keep it up and then hope that we drive the ecosystem to a far advanced state. Okay, so let me take us back to how it started and then the way forward and how it is going. I'll also be speaking about a few challenges facing the data center industry and then its financing and then the demand that comes with it. So, data center evolved in the early 40s with the existence of the early computer systems. Now, the early computer systems which were developed were very huge machines, and then they were managed and used by the US military. The machine a bit complex, and then to operate, and then they required specialized skills, and then they also require specialized rooms with customized cooling temperatures, cable trays, and then some cooling mechanisms and access restrictions to be able to accommodate these. Now, electronic computers that were designed and
hello, Silas, we can hear you, so I think you could continue.
Of creating a computer in 1945 came after the invasion of Japan on America through the sort of
hello, Silas, can you hear me? Il semble qu'on a perdu Silas. Ah, il est là. Silas? Can you hear me, please? Hello, Silas, can you hear me? Can you check your access, please, because you are breaking?
Okay.
Hello, Silas? Hello, Silas, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. I don't know why the internet.
Merci. You can continue, please.
Okay. Okay. So I was saying that in 1945, this whole idea and concept of creating computers in 1945 was as a result of the Japan invasion on America through the Hiroshima-Nagasaki War. So after that, America thought of, actually the American military thought of building a very solid nuclear weapon to be able to defeat Japan or to be able to re-attack Japan after the war. In the course of doing that, they reached out to the University of Pennsylvania, and then they recruited some engineers from there who worked together with the US military to produce the first computers that was ever made in the world. So on the right side, the picture you are seeing is basically the first computer ever produced, and it was called the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. This computer, after it was being produced, was not only used by the US military, but then it was also used afterwards by some financial institutions which needed to do calculations. It was used by NASA. It was used by a whole wide range of people who were into accounting and then calculations. Now, in the year 1990, when things started evolving, when technology started coming up, when vendors started manufacturing budget-friendly network equipment into the system, data centers also became very necessary. And then because of that, companies at the time were able to dedicate smaller rooms in their facilities or in their buildings or in their companies to be able to house this equipment. They were not standardized data centers, but then it was only a small room to be able to house this smaller form factor equipment, unlike the previous mainframe computers that were made or the bigger computers that required bigger facilities to be able to host them in. And so they called them, instead of calling them servers, they rather termed them as data centers within the organization. And it was basically because that is where the company's data was being stored and then kept safe. Around the time when .com popped up and everyone was happy about it, everyone was jumping, internet evolved massively, Google was all over the place, the cloud business started, everyone jumped on. That was the time when data centers actually gained its publicity, and then everyone saw the need and the essence of data centers. Because around that time, huge data were coming in, internet users started.
Hello, Silas. Je pense qu'on a perdu Silas à nouveau. Encore désolé pour cet incident. On espère qu'il pourra revenir de façon confortable. Donc, en attendant que Silas puisse tester, je pense que...
While we wait for Silas to find a solution, we could maybe start the discussion. I think we've got a good backdrop that was set by the previous speaker. So if there are any questions, we could maybe collate questions. So keep sending them for Michel regarding the point about installing backbone fiber, while Silas will hopefully Silas is hopefully finding a solution to be able to join us. Any questions in the room for Michel? We'll bring the Q&A forward and focus on Michel's presentation. We could maybe ask Michel a few questions. You told us, Michel, that Congo was connected to the wax cable system. I know that there are a number of cables that are submarine cables. Are there specific challenges explaining why it's difficult for your country to host additional cables to serve not just Congo, but other potential landlocked countries that would depend on you for access, and countries that are expecting a lot from access to the backbone network? Is there any reason why Congo has less connections? You mentioned that there's a significant number of cables that come close to the continent, so why so few landing points in Congo? That's a good question. What I said that there's only one landing point, one connection to the WAX system. It was an opportunity that arose when the network rose. There were operators on the coast, and there was opportunities there. It's not that we don't want to be connected to more cables, but it's about opportunities becoming available. The WAX project played a significant part and helped. Thank you very much, Michel. There's a question in the room. That question adds to the one you previously asked. At the time, in around 1997, 1998, when SAT3, the cable SAT3 was offshore from Brazzaville, Congo was not involved in the project. That's why from the start of the year 2000s, Congo had no access to submarine fiber because they were not involved in the project until the WAX project was put together and two operators got on board with the project, the national operator, Congo Telecom, and MTM via the MTM group, the sort of global MTM, which was looking at all the infrastructures in various countries. For the future, we're looking at the meta fiber. The landing has not been done yet, but we expect it to happen during the year. So there'll be a third landing, and it will be the meta one. But at the same time, I also had a question for Michel, because when I saw his presentation, he was talking about the intra part, but also the construction of data center, and not much was said about the construction of that data center. So could you tell us a bit more about it? Thank you very much, Serge. A very good way to steer the discussion towards data centers and point about the plans for the future and the key players to further the deployment of these structures. Thank you very much for this additional question, giving me a chance to elaborate. I'll come back to the inception of the project. When it was launched, we planned to build two data centers, a primary one and a secondary one, to achieve the infrastructures in terms of terabyte and backbone that we needed. But due to lack of funding, we were unable to launch the Brazzaville data center. A Chinese company got the market, got the project. They're working on 220 racks, so the work will begin this Sunday, and it's a project that will take a year, and we hope to reach the end of a challenge and have it done in a year and have this data center set up. I would like to clarify a point. We can't have an additional landing point until we've got the backbone structure for it. So There are data centers built in Brazzaville and in another location, but we need more substantial infrastructure. Thank you. Thank you, Michel. A question connected to what you're saying? When you're talking about data centers, you're talking about cooling and energy. We know that in most countries, there's a significant issue with energy supply. So to ensure the success of this data center, what is done to ensure energy supply? This connects to an extent to the deployment of backbones. It's well and good to deploy backbones, but how about maintenance to ensure the sustainability of the service? Do you have representatives in areas where deployment has been difficult? How are you going to maintain the infrastructure? Is it still part of your remit? Are you going to deal with the maintenance now that it's installed, or is it in the hands of contractors? Because that's a problem that has been seen. For national partners, it might be interesting to know who's tasked with maintenance, whether it's subcontracted or whether it's still in the hands of the initial contractor. And in terms of use, are there engineers at a grassroots level, or are there private structures, or how does it work exactly? And how has it been dealt with? Thank you very much for this question. I'm going to address the last question, the one about maintenance of infrastructures. Remember that this cable project is focusing on the construction of the infrastructures. Now, for the network we've installed, there was a requirement from the client to involve a private contractor as well. So the Congo Cameroon network, which was completed in 2020, there was a call for tender to find a private subcontractor that will manage the structure now that it's been built. However, a minimum 2-year guarantee was required from the building company. So making sure that this company that installed the infrastructure remained present in Congo to ensure any follow-up maintenance. So we've got a 2-year warranty on the infrastructures. And then following these 2 years, the company that won the call for tender will handle maintenance. So that's how the maintenance of infrastructure is handled. Regarding the data center, we did consider the question of energy and decided to do what was done for networks. There are a number of solutions that can be considered. For networks, what we did is that we use sort of dual systems to have batteries that keep the system going. We've also got generators. Generators are a solution so that there's not just the one source of energy and different operators, so that if one source fails, then there's another source of energy, another operator that kicks in and maintains energy supply. Thank you very much, Michel. I don't know if there are further questions. If we look to the future, we have seen what was done at the national level, but there's also extension towards Central Africa, or the Central African Republic. You have 2 capitals that are close by. So what are the prospects in practical terms to support each other by connecting these 2 capitals and pulling together your infrastructures with the DRC? And we've seen deployment in Central Africa. Is there any legal framework that enables you to collaborate with the DRC in terms of deployment of infrastructures? Let me react to the last question first. As I said, we were commissioned with the building of a network. So we provided the miles of network, the 2-year warranty that we got from the building company also applies to Central Africa, the Central African Republic. As for protocols for agreement and management of infrastructures between the states, there is still discussions and negotiation as to how the management of a network will be jointly managed. However, we know the operator in Congo. We also know the operator in the Central African Republic. It's NTM Global. I also wanted to inquire about how you cooperate with Kinshasa. Well, as I mentioned briefly with Kinshasa, there's an agreement between two historical operators. So fiber is in place through these historical operators, but there's also an interconnection between the two communities. So when there's a cut on the submarine cable, all the operators were able to be rerouted through this other pathway. And we had funding to further the collaboration, but we already had existing interconnections. When we developed the CAP project, we looked at these alternative routes. But in fact, the historical operators were there before us and they established this connection. There's a company called Silicon working with Brazzaville, which had structures that were already operational. Thank you very much, Michel, for these clarifications. A last question to Serge. As you see, a number of stakeholders are involved in the deployment of these infrastructures. So in your project, there are historical players who played a part. There are also operators in the countries where the project spreads. What's been considered in terms of mutualizing? You have one operator sometimes digging on the left, one digging on the right, and then we're not protecting each other. So anything is done to sort of mutualize resources within this regional framework, because there's no point in reinventing the wheel. Operators in handling these infrastructures are group suppliers. So if I'm considering Congo Telecom, it's handling the Matomi wax network, and it's selling to RTL and other operators. NTM is connected to the WAX network, but they're also using local infrastructure. Once they're in Congo, they're relying on the Congolese network. So no private company is allowed to build backbones in Congo. Licenses are currently going to Congo Telecom, and they were tasked with connecting the cities. Within the city, you can have internal networks, but for the backbone structures, it's the state's prerogative. The state does give license to operators for the constructions. It's not going to NTM or the other usual suspects. It has to go to a call for tender and to go to the best company. It's interesting.
So we have a power cut apparently in the venue. So we are just going to await them getting back online. Power issue on ground.
We had a historical operator that handled the submarine cable, but now Congo has access to other cables through Gabon and Cameroon. So we have access to other submarine cable through our neighbors. There are now a number of operators that are capable of giving access to other cables. I could mention Data Cable, a private company, and they have access to submarine cable via Gabon. So there are other options. When a cable is built, there's one manager, but when it comes to landing and access, private companies can give you another access. I had a comment, maybe a question from Serge, and then we will close the session after this intervention. Thank you. I was interested in Frank's comments. A comment made a few months, weeks ago, there was a cut on the wax cable system, and we used the backbone from DRC. And when we used the backup link through DRC, we weren't using the IXP resources. I want to be very specific. When we needed specific resources, we knew that PCH had mirror servers in Kinshasa. So, but instead of to have the traffic rerouted via Kinshasa, we were rerouting through South Africa or Fortaleza in Brazil. The question that stems from that is, why in such a situation don't we use resources through IXPs when we're coming out in a third country? Because we could go through the neighboring IXP, neighboring countries IXP, sorry.
La question, c'était
question was, why are DNS resources collected at an exchange point were not used? Why were the Brazzaville IXP resources not used? Why was it rerouted elsewhere? When the traffic was rerouting through Kinshasa, was it transiting through fiber or through an IXP? The speaker can't be heard, he's not using the microphone. From what I can get, the resource DNS was connected to the IXP in Kinshasa, but for the rerouting to be effective in terms of DNS, we would have needed this DNS resources to be accessible through a peering that the IXP in Brazzaville ought to have had with Kinshasa, because otherwise the resource is there, but the IXP can't have access to the IP addresses if there's no peering in place. It doesn't necessarily go to the physically closest IXP, and the IP addresses announced by PCH were only in Kinshasa, but if for it to go from the IXP, you needed the DNS to be known in Congo Brazzaville. It can't have a connection. They don't have access to local traffic, and I think that's why resources of this kind should systematically be announced as much as possible and redistributed by all stakeholders of the IXP, because this way, even if PCH was not sharing the routes directly in Congo Brazzaville, if one of the members of the Kinshasa IXP had access to these routes, then it could have been used to rechannel the transit. That's my understanding, but I don't have a full grasp. You're completely right. In this type of incident, when traffic gets stuck, for instance, in Kinshasa, the Kinshasa team really would need to announce specifically the DNS routes needed. Otherwise, if you are establishing links with the DNS, but if the IP addresses are not there, it can't work. But if it is announced, the IXP point needs to accept these IP addresses. The key rules on an IXP is that the routes you receive, you don't redistribute. But when there is an incident, one of the stakeholders could say, okay, I agree with my infrastructure to be used in case there's an incident. And we could come up with advice for the region, because we know that now and then there is an issue affecting one country. Why was there such an issue? I'm sorry, the interpreter cannot hear properly. The speaker is not using a microphone, so the sound is very low and distant. I was saying that traffic could be rerouted through a neighboring country, and there's a risk of backlog if there's no proper communication. But this can happen. It happens in our sub-region. We could present it as a recommendation. It should be part of the issues considered. It could be built into how to tackle punctual problems. Something we should add as well. When you've got an operator in a DRC, if there's a problem with digital traffic, he's not going to pay for 100 gig just to tackle a punctual incident. When you're connecting to an IXP, you have costs. So having the DNS rechanneled, if it's just for the DNS, it's really tricky. If it's the full service for the local traffic, then it will have operational consequences. But within the agreements between operators, as soon as I ask for transit, there's costs, there's always cost implications. Or there's an agreement when we pay for a service at a given point, it has to be considered. It's a process question for me. It's a process that needs to be considered to plan for recovery in case of an incident. But if you need an extra 100 gig for a day, it's additional cost for the person who needs that extra 100 gig.
Transit partenaire vous dit on a telle situation, mais on souhaiterait que tel service soit servi là.
we need to have dialogue so that someone can say, we've got this problem, this issue, we would like traffic to be routed that way. How can we tackle it? If it's just transit, by rerouting your transit, you can optimize.
Ah, je pense que Nico de la DRC en ligne.
I think Nico from DRC wants to share their point.
Juste un moment, il y a Michel qui voulait.
Nico, just a moment, but Michel wanted to come in.
When you say that certain operators need to increase, can you clarify that specific case? If there's a cut of fiber or shutdown, you choose another person. Apologies, there's an echo and couple mics open at the same time. The interpreter really is struggling to hear what's going on. I understand the company. Multiple people speaking at the same time. So what Serge was mentioning with the case, we're encouraging multiple operators to connect to multiple IXPs, especially, for example, in Kinshasa. So long as you're not on the Congolese market, you have the possibility to connect to the IXP and enjoy the services available. But in the case of that we were mentioning, if there was one operator connected in Brazzaville in the IXP, there aren't too many terms and conditions, as long as we know that the services on the IXP aren't going to then damage the local market. So that's how we view remote peering. And in turn, if they're connected to Brazzaville IXP, they can make the most of the services to keep sharing with others. And for some time. So I know for PCH, they don't generate too much traffic, but they provide services, and these services don't eat up bandwidth. But if there was an operator who was connected on both IXPs, they could route their traffic either or each way. Sorry, there was feedback there. Thank you, Nico. I think Silas might be back, but I'm not sure if we can extend time even further. Maybe we could close this session. Apologies to Silas. Thank you for making the efforts to join, to prepare slides. We'll share them with everyone. But the mouth that does the talking has to bear in mind the ears that are listening. I think we've run you down a little bit with all the technical issues. It's been very interesting discussions, but it's a session that's getting to an end. So I think we can continue our chats around coffee and lunch, and you can join mailing lists and keep discussing all of this to cover different issues, because I think then that means one day we'll be able to have reliable, secure backbone, good connectivity, because today's session showed us that we still need to make quite a few efforts in terms of connectivity. And I think that's an illustration, really, are the difficulties that we have and are still facing, but we need to find solutions and go beyond. Thank you, Michel. Thank you, Silas. Thank you for your contributions. And thank you, everyone, for bearing with us and for this interesting session. We're going to stop here, and we will resume with our final session later in the day. Thank you very much.